Hello, and welcome to the Practice Marketing Podcast, highlighting successful strategies from North America's fastest growing clinics and experts so you can learn from their wins and power your practice growth. Hi, I'm your host, Neil Trickett, CEO of Practice Promotions, and today we're going to talk about using workshops and webinars to market your practice with Jon Clay here. He's the owner of SOS Physiotherapy, and he's a physiotherapist and owner of that clinic, a successful now 6-location practice in the Kitchener, Ontario area. And Jonathan was just telling me that he just bought a clinic and running that now in Vancouver. And he's also a coach and a mentor to other practices through the Clinic Accelerator group and helping them grow their businesses and coach them along. So he's been a Practice Promotions client since 2018. I've had the pleasure of talking with Jon many times here, and he's a fantastic coach, got a lot of great knowledge. And so, Jon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Neil. Pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. You've been running webinars and workshops in your practice for some time now. When did you first start running those?
I was thinking about it. When did we do it formally? But then I have to think about when did we really start doing it? And we bought the practice that started this SOS group in '07, and I would said it would have been around 2010, 2011, where the first golf workshop or something came in there because it was something that I like to do, and I ran a series of classes and things. So it's been that long, but I think we really started to get into it more 2017 or so. I got this email from a guy named Chad Madden, and I thought, well, I like to run workshops. We could do this, and
Mhm.
that's when we started to use chat systems to operationalize it a little bit more, and have since just taken it from there to do a lot more stuff on our own, a variety of different topics and things like that.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of clinics, they kind of dabble in some sort of, workshop or webinar, but it's really making it a little bit bigger, a little bit more organized, a little bit more strategic, and part of your overall, marketing to sales process there. So, thinking of that kind of strategy, what is sort of been your thought process behind running workshops and what were you hoping to achieve by implementing those in a more strategic fashion?
Yeah, there's so many things that became involved in doing it. The simplest is that you can't do it on your own, right? You need help. Um, you need to be able to develop other people in your group that can run them, help be there, etc. So one of the key strategies for us and yes, we call Anne our marketing communications manager now, uh, but in the beginning, she was our workshop coordinator, and she did calls and she organized some of the things and made sure that the clinician was doing follow-ups and sending out emails, et cetera, to the patients that had registered, and then the follow-up stuff after that.
Mhm.
And from that, I think it's also just been our own knowledge as a group, learning more about marketing, about the different avenues that you can then market it. Yes, to your own list. Okay, that makes sense. We're going to send an email to everybody about this. But do you have posters in clinic? Do you have posters around town? Have you been to different businesses to offer that same workshop that it would be applicable to? We're doing a TMJ one week this coming Wednesday. So we hit every dentist office we could
Mhm.
imagine. So those are some of the things I think that are key. And then it's just refining your delivery and old Dan Kennedy style, that you have a call to action and that you are having a good time do it, that the audience is engaged, whether it's in person or online.
Excellent. I think kind of we break this down a little bit deeper, right? If it, um, w- w- one thing that I've learned over time is that there's sort of like a pyramid of interest, and so at the top of the pyramid are the people that know their problem. They're looking for that direct solution. They're kind of looking for the best physiotherapist around, and they're kind of ready to go. And that's a very small percentage of the population out there. And then there's a bigger percent of the population that has a problem, but they're not really aware of what solution they need to look for. And so I think that's where workshops really come into play, is that you can educate them through that process of, hey, here's really deeper down of why you're having this particular problem and pain. And then here's why you need to address it with, movement, strength, coordination, whatever it may be. and how, physio plays a role in that. So it's more of this kind of indoctrination period that you get to do with them.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is the workshop or the webinar can't just be educational, like only. There has to be a
Right.
process by which you're potentially moving that person closer and closer to being in your clinic. Or right, then it's just free information, which is great. We love that. Some of our workshops turn into that. But ideally, you're doing this as a marketing tactic to get butts and seats. And so there are different strategies within the workshop or webinar itself. But then obviously, like I said, the registration process and the follow-up is key as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference between, say, going to a community center and doing an educational type, workshop where, we feel good about doing that. We might get a patient here or there from that versus being strategic about it being part of your, marketing process, right? So that, like you said, you want to get as many people into the seats as possible, but then have your educational part of it, but then also the lead up to calling them to action, right? Like booking appointments and stuff. And so for you, do you in that process, do you have someone helping you with actually booking appointments during that time?
Yeah, like I said, Anne, who's been great for us for several years now, it's a Google form with a link or a QR code, depending on where you find it. Where people will register and they get a call within 24 48 hours. She's constantly on that and doing a call and not just saying, "Oh, I'm here. You booked for the registrar, just confirming your information. Good. We'll see you next week." She's already starting that um, rapport building part
Mhm.
that makes them more engaged when you go. So she's getting there similar to how front desk should be operating.
Right.
Is hey, oh, what'd you do? What happened? Why are you? Yeah, tell me a little bit about what's going on. And she'll do that now and create some notes in our worksheet spreadsheet or workshop spreadsheet that we have, so that the clinician go and can see, okay, what was that person's burning question? Sure, what are some of their points? And speak better to the audience. Even better, we'll train the person doing the workshop to make sure they pick some of those people out. Yeah, I read something about somebody who had X, and the person raises their hand, oh, that was me. And they love that connection between the person that actually talked to them on the phone when they first registered a week and a half before the workshop and the actual person that's presenting. And that's key, right? It's key
Mhm.
to there's several different steps where you can build that rapport with the person. It's not just at the workshop.
Yeah. And I think that, we kind of in therapy, we tend to think of just marketing, right? So we're thinking about, oh, I've got to, run digital marketing. I've got to, put some promotion out here, and you're trying to get people to connect with you. But I think where clinics sometimes fall a little short is the sales process, right? So, and they put that a lot of times tremendously heavily on the front desk and expect them to be able to close people into coming in, overcoming insurance or financial objections, whatever it may be there. But I like webinars and workshops because it is kind of a sales process where you get to really help people through changing their mindset of why they would come to therapy.
Yeah. It, the I mean, the whole team needs to be on board with that process, right? And the sales part of it, right? We're not selling, you know, a fur coat to somebody in Hawaii here. We're selling stuff that they need, and we're actually really good at. And if we want those patients to get better, we need to grab them from all sorts of different places and implement our stuff that we know is good and tried and true. And we got pictures on the wall and testimonials all over the place and Google reviews. So why don't we just use every strategy we can to get them to commit to our stuff? And that starts from the first phone call.
Mhm.
Anne used to say when I first sat her down and said, "Well, hey, do you wanna be our workshop person and do calls?" And she's like, "Well, I can't do that. It's so salesy, right?" And that was several years ago, and a whole bunch of patients that have now gotten better, and because she's been willing to take that on. So and just grown with the whole role in general.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm curious, have you noticed that patients that come through the workshop or webinar process, do they tend to stay around for their full plan of care or their treatment more than ones that just come in from a different source?
Um, I would say so, right? We do, whether that person coming in for a workshop specifically, do we track them differently than any other new patient? Um, but that's a given. Somebody that's been how shall I say connected to our group through a workshop, completely cold lead. They've had lots of touch points before they even book the initial assessment,
Hmm.
right? Um, we will get some new assessments right out of the gate, even and like on the first phone call, might say, "Hey, why don't the workshop's not for another 2 weeks? We can get you in tomorrow. Why don't we just do this right now? It sounds like you're really hurting. Why wait for this educational thing?" But the other point is that as you go through the process, the people coming into the workshop, right? There's so many of those touch points, which builds the rapport, like you said, and therefore they're more likely. I mean, they have the workshop, they might have a discovery visit, and then they have their full assessment. They already know what's coming. So the plan of care that Anne talked about, that when we talk about at the workshop of how we treat, and then they talk about again at the discovery visit, and then they have the initial assessment, right? They're ready for it. And
Yeah.
and they're even more on board than somebody that just clicked on the Google review and oh yeah, I'm gonna go to this place. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something sometimes I hear from clinic owners is that they can be frustrated because maybe they're just running Facebook ads to directly get someone to sign up for an evaluation, and they get people sign up, but then they don't show, right? Or they might come for one or two visits as a tire kicker and then not come back. But I think using ads and that to drive people to workshops and webinars is a way like then you have a controlled process like you have where like you said there's lots of touch points as they come through and then they're much more built up in their agreement that this is the right solution for their problem.
And we learned that from when we started out. Chad Madden's group was great in giving us some instruction of how we create that initial contact and have a workshop coordinator and have that initial phone call and the follow-ups, et cetera. Because they were a lot of paid like Facebook leads that were completely cold, didn't know us from anything, but just clicked on, oh, back pain and sciatica workshop in the middle of the night. Sure, I'm going to give that a work. So you had to really make a connection with those people
Mhm.
if they were going to stay on. And you're right though, the people that have been part of our group before, or they've been to a workshop before, or they've just been a patient at some point, certainly those people that go through the workshop system stay on even that much more than a completely cold lead off of Facebook.
Yeah. And so I'm curious for you, what's kind of your typical workshop volume? Like how many people do you typically get into a workshop, and then what percentage of those people, turn into an evaluation on the books?
It's really varied. Obviously, the in-person workshops numbers were bigger before COVID.
Hmm.
So I remember our biggest one in person was probably 60 people for right before we opened our
Wow.
Northfield location. And then a month later, we shut down the clinic for the global pandemic. Oh, that was great. Um, but now it varies. So we will get, depending if it's on like at our place or captured audience workshop, which is at an employer.
Mhm.
Uh, 10 to 15 people, butts and seats is around the number.
Okay.
Uh, but we just had our pelvic therapist run a webinar that had 40 plus registrants, and they probably had 20 plus people online.
Okay.
Um, the pelvic ones are very popular. And
Hmm.
we've always decided to keep those ones online. They work better that way. And
Yeah.
then we run through a variety of different topics at the different clinics. Um, for the in-person workshops.
Yeah, I would imagine for the like public health that people would probably do more of a webinar than feel a little embarrassed probably at an
Yeah,
actual.
and it's just you can do it from the privacy of your home.
Yeah.
You could still questions in the chat, etc. Still happen, and the ladies that do it for us just do a great job of getting
Mhm.
out really good information. Um, and then the people just decide. And I was going to say this earlier, even if you don't get that connection and the butt in the seat, for the return on the investment that we all want, and the stats that say, oh, we got this many patients from this workshop, they're in the system.
Hmm.
We feel really confident about how our whole team delivers these workshops. When they do need it and they do want to pull the trigger, there's a really good chance that those people are coming back to us,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's part of the reason why, even if we get 15 people and only one or two people become patients, I'm not worried about it,
Hmm.
because there was 7 or 8 people that were never patients of ours on that registration list, and I know there's a good chance that those people are coming back.
Yeah, and you get their name, you get the email, so you can, continue to provide them useful information. They might click on something down the road, and then become a patient. So, like you said, it's
Send
a good
them
thing to build your
great
list.
practice promotions generated newsletters,
There you
right?
go. Yeah. Excellent. And so that's talking about online webinars, right? With your pelvic health webinar, you know, 50% of people showing up is actually a really good stat. So for our audience out there, if you're thinking about running a webinar, or if you've run a webinar before and you say you got 50 people sign up and you got 20 people show up, that's actually pretty good numbers. If your numbers are like 15% of showing people up, then you probably have to work on your intake process and how you're doing emails before that. But if you can get 30 to 50% showing up, that's actually pretty good in terms of webinar numbers.
Yeah, and looking at our so out of that, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 new patients, I think.
Wow.
And most of them have, yeah, not been a patient of ours before.
Yeah.
So
And it,
that's it's worth it as far as I'm concerned.
totally. And I would imagine that, once there's some work to get the process up and running, but once you have that process, you can repeat it, right?
Yes, the repurposing of the Google Slides for a variety of different webinars, it happens, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, excellent. So you mentioned, okay, there's a webinar, right, for pelvic topics, and then what other kind of workshop or webinar topics have you found to be successful, or that you usually cycle through?
Um, I mean, obviously, COVID, we had zero webinar ability, knowledge, until COVID hit. And then the first one was me in a cleaned out clinic with my, iMac or whatever, with just the camera on top and doing the whole thing right there in front of the screen while I was standing up. Uh, and it's evolved from that time. So I still do the golf one was always there, but all the ones that we did in person for sure. Shoulder, back pain and sciatica. Um, I believe we've done a TMJ one online, obviously pelvic, like you mentioned. Um, Hip knee arthritis and bracing has been one that we've done online as well too. And these are all the ones that have are doubled in in-person workshops as well too.
Yeah. And I think I'll tell a story here. I think it's good to really survey, your area and what works for you. So when I was in practice, before 2010, we ran workshops. And we did the old-fashioned way with sending out postcards because there was no social media at that time. But we'd get what it was very interesting what I did. So at the front desk, we ran a survey with our patients coming in, and we gave them like a list of say 3 or 4 topics, like which ones would you like to have a workshop around. And we thought, back would be the predominant one. But actually, I put on the last minute, I put arthritis on there. And arthritis was by far the one that people wanted to know most about. And that's because in our area, we had quite a few retirees. And so it was very heavy in Medicare population in the US and Florida. So I thought that was very interesting because I thought I was going to just go and do a straight workshop on, back or knees, but it happened to be arthritis. So came up with the topic of natural ways to relieve your arthritis pain. And that was our biggest workshop. I think we had close to 60 people or more in that workshop. Um, Now, I wasn't as skilled in those days as you are, John, in the process part and the call to action and the indoctrination, but we still did pretty well with number of signups from that. But that's one of the things for our audience out there is that what you are interested in doesn't mean what the public is most interested in. And I think it's just a really simple thing to just survey your patients on what could be some good topics for you in the clinic.
Do you want more freedom in your clinic? Then you need to work on your business, not just in it. The top practice owners know that they need a marketing system that consistently attracts patients from the internet. And at Practice Promotions, we've helped hundreds of practice owners skyrocket to the top of Google and get more new patients from online. Go to practicepromotions.net/kit to get our free practice marketing sample kit. It includes all our digital marketing tips and tricks that will get you new patients from Google. That's practicepromotions.net/kit, KIT, for a free marketing kit. And now back to the show.
And I think to your point, it's the thing that makes the person like that limits their function the most. So they think
True.
arthritis. So for us, shoulder has converted way more than back pain because
Interesting.
people, even though people have back pain, they they manage with it more. They just, oh,
Hmm.
it's a day, I wake up, I got a sore back, and they go, etc. So that there's no real commitment to get it better, right? Because they've just managed with it for so long. But when your shoulder is sore, and like there's all sorts of things that you are limited doing. And I think similar to arthritis, that's what makes people want to know more about it and are therefore more committed to making a change by
Hmm.
using our services. So
Yeah, that's a great thought there, and yeah, that's part of the consideration of making it a successful workshop, right? Is what is the topic, what is going to be most useful, what is the one that people want to do the most thing about, and like I think that's a great way to look at it, is what limits their function the most, and shoulder is definitely a great topic for that. And I'm curious, have you done any kind of like running workshops or anything like that?
Yes, and what we've done in the past is a community run. We have a chiropractor, Rachel Goldsworthy, that works at our Northfield location. She's a big runner, and so she's from 2 or 3 years in a row. We'll do couch to 5K.
Hmm.
Right? One of the nights where they show up for the run, there'll be an educational part, mini workshop, etc. Where people can learn about different injuries and things like that as well too. There's a series of emails that are informational that go out about it also.
Hmm.
So those types of topics, functional things. So shoot, I think I've done a gardening webinar or like things around home hacks for the average person, how to do things functionally better and avoid pain, etc.
Hmm.
That was another COVID special, I think. So
You got to experiment with them, right? And vary it up with that. And now, with your webinars, right? Your online webinars, have you set up anything that's like evergreen where it runs a little bit more automatically, or is everything kind of live?
everything's live. If people ask for the recording, we'll give it to them. But we've never gotten to the point where we would chop up bits and edit it and give it to people. And that's probably a route that we could go with it. But
Mhm.
we've always liked to do them live. And like I said, if people want to see it afterwards or they missed it, etc., then we'll send them the recording. But it's not something that we have automated to the point where, oh, come and click this anytime and see the same one because things get dated, right?
Yeah.
And the clinician might not even be working for us anymore or something
Mhm.
like that. And
Yeah.
we don't want that stuff to happen. So we'd much rather be able to run. We have enough clinicians that are interested in doing these that we can run them in a live fashion for sure.
Yeah, and I think the other part too is like if someone has to attend at a certain time and even a certain place, right? There's more commitment from the patient, so that already tells you that there's a higher probability of that person becoming a patient versus someone who could just access a video. There's probably a smaller percentage of those people that would take action from that.
Yeah, exactly. I am not a big online booking fan.
Hmm.
So the whole idea of just click and something happens and then click and then it goes away, uh, those aren't the type of patients that we want to spend a lot of time with. We
Yeah.
want to commit to the ones that want to commit to getting better and getting to their why and really accomplishing their goals
Yep.
and graduating per se. And that is hard to do with the folks that are just like, oh, this looks interesting, click, and away we go.
Hmm. And you had mentioned a little bit earlier that you can't, you don't want to really do this by yourself. It's kind of hard to do this by yourself. So in your setup, you'd mentioned the person that helps kind of the setup and the calls and that. Can you walk us through a little bit of like who runs it? Do you have other therapists help you with that and kind of the process?
Um, hey, in Accelerator and for my own coaching part, we talk about delegating the things that you kind of don't want to do, and that's right, and because you need to be doing other things. Truth is, I really like doing workshops, right? So I still get my grease, my hands in there and run the odd one or co-host, etc. Or I'm just at the back, those two guys from the Muppets, barking jokes and things like that, just to make it more interesting. I try to get to each one that we run, but it's really important that your whole team is involved in marketing. That like it should be embedded in your core values a little bit
Hmm.
that we're all in this together. And if you're just waiting for us as the owners to fill your schedule, that's a problem.
Right.
So yeah, we have some clinicians that are more inclined than others to do these extra things, and we've created a small stipend for them to do those things. But there's some stuff involved. Now we have, like we talked about before, processes in place, the worksheets that are already built out for in-person workshops, or the webinar slides. If you want to run back or shoulder or something, or any of the topics that we've done, we share those amongst our group. It starts with Anne, our marketing coordinator, connecting with the clinician. And usually we always have two people running. It's very rarely is it only one person running the workshop because
Hmm.
we want those people to ham and egg it a little bit. And though they will coordinate what the agenda is, which is the agenda is really important that you're marketing to people that would go on your Google form or whatever you're registering. Really short key topics, the 5 best things to, or John's 3 top ways to et cetera,
Right.
to reduce your
Yeah.
pain. That's always been a staple since we went through the Chad Madden group as well too. From that, we'll always make sure there's at least one person at the workshop if we're doing it in person that can book people, either for discovery visits or full assessments right then and there. So
Hmm.
we don't go hardcore at our main in-person workshops of, all right, who wants to book an assessment right now? Go. We're much more inclined to get those discovery visits. People
Hmm.
are it's free, no obligation, etc. Once we have them come in for that, though, we usually convert 80% of those that do come in. So
Yeah. I think you make a good point though. Like it's not a one man show, and so sometimes in for a smaller practice, they might just go and do everything by themselves at a place, or even just have some workshop internally. But I really like the way that you've approached it, where make it part of the team, make it part of the culture. They can be promoting it internally, and then if it's something as a practice owner you hate doing, it's a good thing to delegate. But find the person who has really bubbly personality,
yeah.
that can really engage an audience, right? And I'm sure you have somebody in your practice that's more of that way. If that's
And
not
and,
you,
and Anne is that person, right? So
yeah,
the job is suited for her. But uh, to your point, there are owners out there that are only one or two clinicians, and I remember doing them like everything,
hmm,
the calls, the marketing. It wasn't as good as it was now. Similar to what you were talking about, Neil. Like there was a feeling out process of this whole thing that's evolved to today, but you have to start somewhere.
right,
And I can just say it's just been a valuable thing for us ongoing to get better and better at. And now we can put one of these things wherever we kind of want to without too much effort.
yeah, and probably I know I've had this, but um, it's not something you want to just give up on if you have a bad showing, right? So there's times where you don't get many people show up. You thought you had a good list, and it
Oh,
didn't work out
oh
right.
shoot. Well, we even recently we've done some for like 7 or 8 people, right? Or it's like 4 or 5, and you say, "Oh, we're going to postpone this until X date," until you just call it quits.
Yeah.
But the 10 to 15 number, if you get in that wheelhouse, even like 8 to 10, it's worth doing because you
Hmm.
create an intimate audience with that group. Questions are more forthcoming because it's not a big group where people feel a little nervous. And that's sometimes where you get the most commitment from people.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point because you could also speak to a very large crowd, and that might be harder to convert too, because like you said, it's not as much of an intimate or back and
Yeah,
forth questions.
you have to work
I think the
really
more you
hard at
can
building
foster
relations.
that, the better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. And so if you were chatting with a practice owner or coaching a practice owner, what would be kind of 3 simple things that they could get started on, to run a workshop or a webinar?
Um, I would do in person, right? If you're at all good at public speaking, do the in-person workshops first and get comfortable with that. COVID forced us to get into webinars, and yes, it's nice that we do them once in a while, but I love in-person first
Hmm.
because you are relationship building. You're well, for those that are my age or older, we're Phil Donahue out in the audience, tapping people on the shoulder about their story and taking people's names and, oh yeah, what happened to you, and creating those relationships. Um, it's great to have at least one person, and it might need to be you in the beginning, but that person that is the workshop coordinator,
Hmm.
such that you can call the person within a couple of days of registering at most and following up with them afterwards. Those phone calls absolutely need to happen, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's just to get an idea of feedback of how the workshop went for them, right?
Hmm.
And if they loved it, oh well, it was great. Yeah, I'm not ready yet, but okay, well, it'd be nice if you could leave us a Google review, right? And you use that as a strategy as well too. And then I think number 3, yes, what we talked about in terms of topics, it does need to like something that you can speak easily about. So make it easy. Don't make it like high level, big words type of stuff. We're talking grade 4 type
Hmm.
of just deliver stuff in a comfortable mannerism, right? Make people feel at ease. So don't use big words. And if you do, make a funny joke about it. Like, if somebody stutters around it, those types of things are very important. So you need to feel comfortable with the topic that you're speaking of as well too,
Hmm.
because if people feel like you're reading off a sheet and just okay, and now we're next, etc., it's not going to go well.
Right. Yeah. Great advice there.
I only get 3, right? Okay, just
Yeah, yeah. There's
I
lots.
was working hard there.
We could spend a lot of time on that, I'm sure, and how to totally run
How
it.
long is this thing, anyways? Yeah.
Kind of switching gears a little bit here. Let's talk about Google Ads.
Yeah.
Because you started Google Ads probably about 3 years ago, something like that, right? 2021. So just kind of from your frame of reference, what was it that made you decide to try, Google Ads back then?
Um, Shame, guilt? No, I don't know what it was. My coach Paul Moon saying, "Why are you not running Google Ads, you dummy?" Something like that. I really, it wasn't even on the radar that we would do. I have to think, like in 2020, our marketing knowledge kind of went up like
Yeah.
that because there was nothing else to do but sit around in your jammies and watch Rick Lau or something, right? So Rick and I had several conversations just on different Zoom calls about, and so that was probably the beginning of it when we were getting coaching, right? Before they asked me to coach, I was getting coaching, and it was, here's an avenue of marketing that you guys should be using. And since then, and I mean, shoot, I coach people that know way more about the ins and outs of Google AdWords and how to manage their own campaigns more than I do. And that's why we have people to manage it for us. So Justin's now working with us, and love him to death. He's been great, and we have campaigns going for every clinic.
Yeah. Excellent. And it's good that I think, again, we all kind of keep leveling up our knowledge and keep learning, right, as we go along. And And especially, in marketing, there's always so much to learn along those lines and how you can implement that in your practice. And I think for what I've seen with a lot of clinicians is that they have an interest around Google Ads, unsure if they should use it towards a practice. Obviously, there's the advertising spend that you have to spend with Google, right? But I think it's really easy to, if you understand that, if people will find you when you're at the top of Google, right? And we always want to have our clinic at the top of Google. And Google's model is pay to play. So if you want to be at the top of Google, you got to pay to be up there, right? And that's where Google Ads comes into it. The one thing that I've seen time and time again is that um, a practice owner might have dabbled in it, right? They might have tried Google Ads. They ran it themselves. They put a certain budget towards it, and they didn't see much happen from it, or they didn't know how to track it or see an impact from that. And one thing to understand is Google Ads is quite complex, right? And it takes someone with knowledge in it and then consistency in monitoring it to make it happen. And so that's where a lot of times if you're running it yourself, you're like, hey, I'm doing Google Ads, but I'm not quite sure if it's working or not. Right? So you need the ability of how to set up the campaigns, how to keep monitoring and adjusting the campaigns, and how to track the campaigns. And that's where I think really it is a smart idea to leverage an outside source to really that's expert in that can help you, make it go because it does work well when it goes.
Yeah, I know a select few clinic owners that are really good of managing it on their own, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, people that I coach and people out within Accelerator that I've come to know really well use a service for managing their ads. And I think it's important for everyone to understand it's multifaceted, right? It's not just about throwing money and getting the right campaign. You have to have the other stuff that adds to it, right? Your website, your Google business profile, your Google reviews, all of those things. So it goes back to your team then,
Mhm.
right? If we didn't have a bunch of different clinicians, and there wasn't a lot when we started, writing their own personal newsletters that go out in the emails that connect to our website, etc. If we didn't have those same practitioners getting Google reviews ongoing, and our marketing coordinator, she is great at updating the Google's business profile for all the different clinics, adding
Mhm.
photos, making sure the hours are up to date, all that regular activity on the back end is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the foundation, right? And then you're paying to be able to advertise to drive to all of that, right? So, yeah, if you don't have very good reviews, if your business profile barely has any pictures or it's barely updated, if your website's not that, good, has that enough information or a lot of personal pictures, right, and video, that's what really helps people connect with you as individuals. Like you're so right, like that all has to be in place for it to be successful.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. And so, John, we've been working together for many years. What's your experience like working with practice promotions?
Um, yeah, it's we didn't know what we didn't know back then. So uh, it was great to be able to just well, we took a risk. We didn't know, Neil, that you guys were going to help us knock it out of the park, et cetera, and have in scale, et cetera. Um, so it was a bit of a leap of faith to spend what was more money than we were used to spending on marketing, right? Realizing that we needed to, though, that word of mouth just isn't cutting it anymore. Um, which was a complete departure from the previous owner that ran our clinic and even how we thought we should run the clinic for the first shoot 5 or 7 years that we ran the place. So the experience has been great with respect to how you guys manage those newsletters for us, right? Helping us with anything on the website. Anne's gotten a little bit better about doing her own thing on WordPress, but if we need something that is how shall I say even more in depth for a new page or landing page or something, then we know we can connect with you guys. Um, and the communication has been good, right? Especially now with Justin on board for Google Ads, and the reminders for certain things. yeah, we've gotten into our own sort of operational system with which clinicians writing which newsletter, how Anne works on the newer platform for email delivery, and it's been working really well.
Excellent. Love to hear that. And I think it's really critical to understand that whether you work with practice promotions or you work with any other, kind of marketing agency, it's not just a set it and forget it, right? It's a collaboration. And you have to think of that marketing agency as an extension of your marketing internally. And so a lot of what we do is try to work closely with the practice owner, with especially the marketing director, if you have a marketing director in there. And I love what you've done to incorporate your clinicians to also be part of the being able to tell the stories from within, and give the advice and their, knowledge. And so it builds on that collaboration. And that's when you really get good traction and good results with your marketing.
Yeah, the patients want to know more about you. Like, it doesn't have to just be purely transactional.
Yeah.
There should be a variety of different ways that you're relationship building with people that are coming into your place. Uh, it should be like Cheers, where everybody knows your name. Okay, sorry, old school reference again. But the idea that I can walk into any of our clinics, well, maybe not the newer ones, but certainly Elmira, Northfield, or Belmont, and I see patients that I used to know all the time. And hey, how you going? And that part is a great feeling. And we want to foster an environment where our clinicians, front desk staff, co-ops coming in that become clinicians, that they are fostering those relationships too. And so there is a marketing component that is operationalized that helps with that. And that's newsletters, yes, the types of emails that we send out, and all sorts of marketing pieces help with that relationship building.
Absolutely. And I really love what you've done there to make that part of the core values, part of the culture, part of the expectation too, right? So
Mhm.
well done on that. And so, John, you coach a lot of practices out there and both in the US and Canada. And I'm just curious, if as you give advice, what would you say to our audience, would be one simple step that they could start as a practice owner to take back control of their business and move it forward?
Um, Leveraging your team. Okay, we've discussed that already, right? Even if it's a team of one or two, right? Get those people involved, right? The we as owners should not be here on this pedestal and looking down at the group, right? It should be a collaborative team effort. So there are marketing endeavors that we've taken on that I have failed miserably at, and money that we have spent, etc. Um, and the team should know that the owner should be vulnerable and willing to make mistakes so that they are okay with making mistakes, because sometimes clinicians front desk, or they're kind of afraid of this whole thing that is marketing, but it's okay. No ideas off the table, and getting together group and doing it together is so important. And then the last thing, probably the big one, I remember when I took a Paul Wright seminar in Vancouver, Paul Wright from Australia, that really started me thinking that there's more to this business than just being a physio. Um, Answering that email from Chad Madden about workshops, you have to take a risk. You have to take a bit of a risk and invest in it, and then follow through. It's not just going to come to you, and you spend a bit of money and there you go. You actually have to invest in this and educate yourself about it and the different strategies. Uh, I would say that was the big thing way back then that started the wheels turning, I think.
Excellent. That is so true and great advice because, you can't, what got you here can't get you, there, right? And you have to be, I think that's part of being an entrepreneur, right? Is that you can stomach taking calculated risks. And when you put your foot out there, sometimes you stumble and fall, but sometimes you win, right? And then that gives you the confidence to make a bigger step the next time and on and on and on, right? And that's
Yep,
how
the
you can
risks we
grow.
take now are not the ones we took
That's right.
10 years ago. So,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so wonderful advice there, John. So, John, thank you so much for being on with the podcast here, sharing your wisdom and what's been successful for you with workshops and webinars and Google Ads. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. And to our listeners out there, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. Don't forget to subscribe to us on all our different social media channels and YouTube to get more, information and, tips and advice for you. Also, practicepromotions.net has a bunch of information on there and free downloads and all kinds of good stuff to help you get traction with marketing in your practice. So, Neil Trickett here from Practice Promotions and the Marketing Podcast, wishing you much success in your practice.
Thank you for listening to the Practice Marketing Podcast. Don't forget to get your free practice marketing sample kit at practicepromotions.net/kit. Start 2024 off the right way by building marketing systems that automatically attract new patients from online. That's practicepromotions.net/kit.